Plants can reproduce both sexually and asexually. When a plant reproduces asexually, it clones itself. It creates another plant with an identical genotype. In asexual reproduction, new individuals are produced from a single parent without the fusion of sex cells. While plants may still reproduce sexually, asexual reproduction is advantageous whenever conditions are stable and the plant is thriving in its current environment. When environmental conditions vary or change suddenly, genetic diversity becomes important. Those organisms adapted to the environmental changes will have a better chance of surviving. Genetic diversity is generated through sexual reproduction, a process that involves the fusion of two reproductive cells, or gametes, such as an egg and a sperm. In sexual reproduction, genetic diversity is achieved through recombination and independent assortment of gamete chromosomes. Both sexual and asexual reproduction are important in agriculture. For example, most fruit trees are grown from grafts. A graft is a shoot or bud, called the scion, that has been joined to another plant called the stalk. Grafting allows for optimal combinations of root systems, good-tasting fruit, and resistance to pests. Grafting is a form of asexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction and selection are at the heart of plant breeding. Many characteristics, such as resistance to disease and pests, have been introduced into crop plants over hundreds of years. One example is resistance to leaf rust, a damaging disease caused by a fungal pathogen. Wheat breeding programs have developed varieties of wheat that are resistant to the rust fungus. Resistant varieties typically possess a leaf rust resistance gene called an LR gene. Biotechnology provides another route to introducing desired genes and traits into plants. It can accomplish things that traditional breeding techniques cannot. For example, resistance to leaf rust that is introduced through traditional crossbreeding is often associated with a single gene product. Resistance to this gene product may be overcome by a resistant strain of rust fungus that evolves through natural selection. After a few years, the once resistant varieties of wheat lose their effectiveness against the disease. This process is similar to the way bacteria develop resistance to antibiotics. To get around these problems, scientists are in the process of bioengineering a more durable variety of wheat that has multiple gene resistance. This is like using a multiple drug cocktail in the treatment of HIV, the virus that causes AIDS. The wheat's fungus-resistant gene products work together like HIV drugs. Even if the fungus becomes resistant to one of the gene products, the other gene products still prevent the fungus from growing on the wheat. Plants may reproduce asexually or sexually. In asexual reproduction, an entirely new plant arises that is genetically identical to the parent plant. In sexual reproduction, egg and sperm cells combine to form a new plant that is genetically distinct from the parent plants. In asexual reproduction, different parts of the plant, stems, roots, leaves, and spores can give rise to new plants. In sexual reproduction, specialized structures have evolved to produce the reproductive cells. In angiosperms, the flowers contain the reproductive organs. The male reproductive organ is the stamen, and the female reproductive organ is the carpel. These organs may be found fully developed in the same flower, in different flowers on the same plant, or on different plants. The development of distinct male and female plants is one of the mechanisms that prevents self-pollination, ensuring genetic diversity. Animals play an important role in the pollination of plants. The synergy between plants and animals in the pollination process is one of the best examples of coevolution. Fertilization occurs after pollination. The sperm and egg fuse to form a zygote. The zygote develops into an embryo, which is the beginning of the new plant. The embryo is part of a seed, and the seed is encased in a fruit. The fruit aids in the seed dispersal, and under the right conditions the seed germinates and a new plant develops.